Hi everyone, welcome to this section on Constitution. Why and how? Why we need a constitution and how the Indian Constitution is made. We are going to learn in this section. What a constitution means, what a constitution does to the society, how constitutions govern the allocation of power in society, what was the way in which the Constitution of India was made. We are going to learn the answers of these questions in this course. So, what a constitution means, what a constitution does to the society, how the constitutions govern the allocation of power in society, what was the way in which the Constitution of India was made. Why do we need a constitution? What are the functions? What is the role does it perform for a society? How does a constitution relate to our day-to-day life? So by the end of the course, we will be able to answer how is the Indian Constitution made? What is a constitution? What are the powers of the constitution? How is the power allocation done? What are the functions of the constitution? What is the role that it performs for a society? And how does a constitution relate to our daily existence? Stay tuned, we'll catch you in the next section. What is the first function of a constitution? Constitution allows coordination and assurance. That is the first function of the constitution. The members of this group, as you can see on the screen, are diverse in various ways. They might have different religious allegiance, they pursue different professions, they have different abilities, they have different hobbies, different tastes and preferences in everything from films to books. Some are rich, some are poor, some are old, some are young. So there is a diverse nature in the group. But for all the diversity, this group has to live together. Though they are rich, they are poor, they have different professions to pursue, different religions to elegance, they might have different tastes regarding films and books, but they all have to live together. They are different upon each other in various ways. They require cooperation of each other. Though we all are different in nature, though we have different tastes, different professions, different various likes and tastes in our life, we all need to live together in the same country and we all need to depend on each other. We all are interdependent on each other. We require the cooperation of each other. What will enable the group to live together peacefully? What will the group need? The group needs certain basic rules. Think of what would happen in the absence of some basic rules. Every individual would be insecure simply because they would not know what members of this group could do to each other, who could claim rights over what. So if there are no rules, every individual would be simply insecure of each other. They don't know what the other person might say and what they might claim. Any group will need some basic rules that are publicly promulgated and known to all the members of the group to achieve a minimal degree of coordination. So we all need to know that any group for that matter, it needs some basic guidelines, some basic norms, some basic rules that are known publicly to everyone, promulgated publicly to everyone, so that it is known to everybody and everybody must follow this. Then only you can achieve a minimal degree of coordination. But these rules must not only be known they must also be enforceable. If you only know the rules but you don't follow them, then there is no use of that. We need to know the rules. At the same time, we all need to follow the same rules. We should not violate the rules. Saying that the rules are legally enforceable gives an assurance to everybody that others will follow these rules. So once you say that we all need to follow these rules, which is saying legally these are enforceable, and if you don't follow the rules, then you will be punished. So the first function of the Constitution is to provide a set of basic rules that allow for the minimal coordination amongst the members of a society. So what is the first basic rule of a constitution? The basic rule of a constitution, or the very first duty of the constitution, is to set of a basic rules. You need to provide a basic set of guidelines, basic set of rules that allows for minimal coordination amongst the members of the society. That's the first function of a constitution. Clarification of decision-making powers. Who will make the decisions? Who decides the major factors in the country? A constitution is a body of fundamental principles according to which a state is constituted or governed. So as you can see on the screen, the Constitution of India, Constitution means a book which contains the basic principles according to which the state is constituted or governed. The first question you will have to decide is, who gets to decide what the laws governing the society should be? So we need to know the answer for the first question, that is, who will be deciding? Who will decide the laws governing the society that should be? The Constitution has to provide an answer to these questions. It specifies the basic allocation of power in the society, and it decides who gets to decide what the laws will be. So a constitution gives you a clear answer to the question who gets to decide. It specifies very clearly, crystal clearly, the basic allocation of power in the society. It decides who gets to decide. Who decides who gets to decide? The Constitution decides who gets to decide what the laws will be. In democratic constitutions, broadly speaking, the people get to decide, but this matter is not so simple. In any democratic setup, it is broadly speaking, the people get to decide. So, how will the people decide? Is it a simple affair? No. This matter is not so simple. Before identifying what the law in any given society is, you have to identify who has the authority to enact it. In the Indian Constitution, for example, it is specified that in most instances, Parliament gets to decide laws and policies, and that Parliament itself be organized in a particular manner. So in Indian Constitution, it is clearly mentioned that who gets to decide the laws and the policies. It is the Parliament that gets to decide the laws and the policies. But at the same time, Parliament also should be organized in a particular manner. Those specifications are also discussed in the Constitution. So this is the function of the Constitution, to decide and identify what the law in any given society is. You have to identify who has the authority to enact it, who will make it. If Parliament has the authority to enact laws, there must be a law that bestows this authority on Parliament in the first place. You cannot simply say that Parliament will make the laws and we have to follow it. There should also be a provision in the Constitution which clearly mentions and bestows this authority, that Parliament is the highest law-making body in the country. then only Parliament can have the authority to enact the laws. It is an authority that constitutes the government in the first place. So the Constitution sets very clearly the guidelines how the Parliament should be there, what is the authority of the Parliament, what is the role of the government in the first place, and those all are the functions of the Constitution. So the second function of the Constitution is to specify who has the power to make decisions in a society, who will decide the matters related to laws. It decides how the governments will be constituted. So, specification of decision-making powers is the second function of the Constitution, or the second duty of the Constitution, to specify who has the power to make decisions in a society. It also decides how the government will be constituted. The third function of the Constitution is to set some limitations or limits on what a government can impose on its citizens. These limits are fundamental in nature, in the sense that government may never trespass them. Especially when it comes to the democratic setup, there should be a clear limitations to the government, so that the government can never be autocratic in nature. Constitution limits the powers of the government in many ways. How does the Constitution limits the powers? The Constitution limits the powers by specifying certain fundamental rights that all of us citizens possess as the members of the nation, and which no government can ever be allowed to violate. So, the Constitution's important duty is to limit the powers of the government and keep the fundamental rights of the citizens uninterrupted. No government can ever be allowed to violate or trespass into the fundamental rights horizon of the citizens. The exact content and interpretation of these rights may vary from constitution to constitution. Constitutions will protect the basic cluster of rights. Citizens will be protected from being arrested arbitrarily and for no reason. No government, no police, no court can arrest any citizen of the country, especially India, for no reason. There should be a clear specified reason and the violation of the law, then only the citizen can be arrested. Otherwise, Constitution will protect the basic cluster of rights. This is one of the basic limitations upon the powers of the government. No government can arrest any individual without any reason. Like this, the Constitution puts the limitations upon the powers of government. Citizens will normally have the rights to some basic liberties such as freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of association, freedom to conduct a trade or a business, etc. So, citizens have basic rights or basic liberties like freedom of speech. They can express their opinion, they can express their conscience, they can form an association of their choice, they can conduct a trade, they can operate a business. These are normally some basic liberties which are guaranteed to the citizens of India by the Constitution. In practice, these rights can be limited, can be stopped for a while during the times of national emergency. And the Constitution specifies the circumstances under which these rights may be withdrawn. So, in the Constitution, it is clearly mentioned that at the time of national emergency, there can be a limitation for the citizens' basic liberties, but under which circumstances the union government can withdraw the rights of the citizens is also clearly specified in the Indian Constitution. That's how the limitations are placed on the powers of the government. Most of the older constitutions have limited themselves largely to allocation or allocating the decision-making power and setting some limits to the government's power. So most of the constitutions which were written prior to 19th century have limited themselves to the decision-making power and setting some limitations to the government. But many 20th century constitutions, of which the Indian Constitution is a finest example, also provide an enabling framework for the government to do certain positive things, to express the aspirations and the goals of the society. So as we see, the new constitutions which came after the 20th century or from the 20th century, like Indian Constitution, have enabled to be the finest examples, providing the framework for the government to do certain positive things and to express the aspirations and goals of the society. The Indian Constitution was particularly innovative in this aspect. So, societies with deep entrenched inequalities of various kinds will not only have to set limits on the powers of the government, but they also have to enable and empower the government to take positive measures to overcome the forms of inequality and deprivation. So, Indian Constitution was particularly very innovative in this respect of bringing out the aspirations and the goals of a society. The societies with deeply entrenched inequalities in various forms, like the caste discriminations, economic inequalities, regional diversities, religious differences, will not only have to set the limitations on the power of government, but they will also have to enable and empower the governments to take a positive measure to overcome the forms of inequality or in any forms of inequality that were existing in the country. The government has to be empowered to take certain steps to overcome the forms of inequality and deprivation. For example, India aspires to be a society that is free of caste discrimination. If this is our society's aspiration, the government will have to be enabled and empowered to take all the necessary steps to achieve this goal. Just only giving the aspirations about the society is not the work of the Constitution. It will also make sure that the government will have the necessary powers to take all the necessary steps to achieve this goal. The framers of the Indian Constitution, for example, thought that each individual in society should have all that is necessary for them to lead a life of minimal dignity. So when the Constitution is being framed by the framers, they had a clear idea in their mind that they need to give each and every individual in the society all that is necessary for them to lead a life of minimal dignity and social self-respect. The minimum material of well-being, education are the basic goals of the framers of the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution enables the government to take positive welfare measures, some of which are legally enforceable. So, the Constitution has empowered the government to take positive welfare measures so that they are legally enforceable. The preamble of our Constitution and these provisions are found in the sections of fundamental rights. The directive principles of state policy also enjoin the government to fulfill certain aspirations of the people. So, the fourth function of a constitution is to enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of a society and create conditions for a just society. So, in this section, we learned about the aspirations and the goals of the society. It is not only the duty of the constitution to give up the aspirations of the society, but also enable the government to fulfill the aspirations of a society and also to create an environment, a condition for a minimal, dignified life leading to a just society. Enabling provisions of the Constitution. The constitutions are not only the rules and regulations controlling the powers of the government, they also give powers to the government for pursuing collective good of the society. So till now we learned that the constitution not only specifies the rules, not only gives the details who will make the laws, but it also put limitations on the powers of the government. Till now we have learned these particular points, but the constitution not only puts the rules and regulations controlling the powers of the government, but it also gives powers to the government for pursuing collective good of the society. So it enables the government to do collective good of the society. The Constitution of South Africa assigns many responsibilities to the government. It wants the government to take measures to promote conservation of nature, to preserve the nature, to make efforts to protect persons or groups which are subjected to unfair discrimination, and also provides that the government must progressively ensure adequate housing to all, healthcare, etc. So, the Constitution not only specifies the rules and the regulations, but it also empowers the government for pursuing the collective good of the society. As we can see the example of South Africa, where the Constitution of South Africa assigns the responsibilities to the government to promote conservation of nature, to make efforts to protect persons or groups from unfair discrimination, to provide adequate housing to all, and also health care to all. Like this, Constitution also ensures by giving certain powers to the government for pursuing collective good of the society. In the case of Indonesia, the government is enjoined to establish and conduct national educational system. The Indonesian constitution also ensures that the poor and the destitute children will be looked after by the government. As we can see the examples of South Africa and Indonesia, the constitutions have also given certain powers and guidelines where they can ensure the overall good of the members of the society and also for the nation. Fundamental identity of a people. A constitution expresses the fundamental identity of a people. This means that people as a collective entity come into being only through the basic constitution. So, a constitution clearly gives out the fundamental identity of the people. It is by agreeing to a basic set of norms about how one should be governed and who should be governed that one forms a collective identity. So when you agree for a basic set of norms and when you agree who will be governing us and who should be governed, then it gives us a collective identity. One has many sets of identities that exist prior to constitution, but by agreeing to certain basic norms and principles, one constitutes one's basic political identity. So, before we might be having many sets of identities based on your religion, based on your region, based on your caste, but once you agree the basic norms and principles of a constitution, you establish your basic political identity. That's how constitution gives out the basic political identity. The second thing, the constitutional norms are the overarching framework within which one pursues individual aspirations, goals, and freedom. So the second important point regarding the fundamental identity is that the constitutional norms are overarching framework. These constitutional norms are present in every nook and corner of the society within which one should pursue individual aspirations, goals, and freedom within the constitutional norms which were provided, or within the framework which is provided by the Constitution. The Constitution sets authoritative constraints upon what one may or may not do. The Constitution clearly specifies through authoritative constraints that what one may do and what one may not do. It defines the fundamental values that we may not trespass. The Constitution clearly specifies what is not accepted by the Constitution. So, the Constitution also gives one a moral identity. So, Constitution gives us a moral identity. Third and finally, it may be the case that many basic political and moral values are now shared across different constitutional traditions. If one looks at a constitution around the world, they differ in many respects. In the form of the government, they enjoin in many procedural details, but they also share a good deal. So the constitutions across the world are different in many respects, but also have certain common good deal, share what they do. Most modern constitutions create a form of government that is democratic in some respect. Most claim to protect certain basic rights. So the most modern constitutions create a form of government that is mostly democratic in some respects, and they also claim to protect certain basic rights. But the constitutions are different in the way they embody the conceptions of national identity. They may have different ways of giving the national identity. Most nations are an amalgamation of a complex set of historical traditions. So many nations today are a combined efforts of a complex set of historical traditions. They weave together the diverse groups that reside within the nation in different ways. So many nations try to weave together with the diverse groups or the different groups of people who are living within the nation in different ways. For example, German identity was constituted by being ethnically German. So every nation has its own set of national identities. The Constitution gave expression to this identity. The Indian Constitution, on the other hand, does not make any kind of ethnic identity as a criterion for a citizenship. Whereas in German, we have seen German ethnicity is considered as a criteria, but in India, no ethnic identity is a criteria for citizenship. Different nations embody different conceptions of what the relationship between the different regions of a nation and the central government should be. So the Constitution also have different nations embodying different conceptions about their relationship between different regions of a nation and the central government should be. This relationship constitutes the national identity of a country. So, with that, they give the framework for the fundamental identity of a country. The Indian Constitution clearly does not have any ethnic identity as a criteria for citizenship. The authority of a constitution. What is a constitution? How effective is a constitution? Is a constitution just? In most of the countries, constitution is a compact document that comprises a number of articles about the state, specifying how the state is to be constituted and what norms it should follow. But some countries, like the United Kingdom, for instance, do not have a single document that can be called as constitution. Rather, they have a series of documents and decisions that, taken collectively, are referred to as the Constitution. So we can say that Constitution is a document or a set of documents that seek to perform the functions. Many constitutions around the world exist only on paper. They were mere words existing on a parchment. So the authority of a constitution, what is a constitution? Is constitution just a document which comprises a number of articles about the state, that is specifying what the states have to be constituted, what norms it has to follow? How effective is the constitution? Does it have only a single document or it has a series of documents? Because if you see the case study of United Kingdom, they do not have a single document to be called as a constitution. They have a series of documents or decisions which are taken collectively are referred as constitution. Sometimes in the world constitutions, you can see them existing only on paper. They were just mere words existing on a parchment. But to answer the question, what is a constitution? We can say that constitution is a document or a set of documents that seek to perform the functions. Mode of promulgation. This refers to how a constitution comes into being. Who crafted the constitution? How much authority did they have while they were crafting the constitution? In many countries, constitutions remain defunction because they are crafted by military leaders or leaders who are not popular and do not have the ability to carry the people with them. The most successful constitutions are like India, South Africa, and the United States, and these constitutions were created in the aftermath of the popular national movements that happened in those countries. The constitution drew enormous legitimacy from the fact that it was drawn up by people who enjoyed immense public credibility, who had the capacity to negotiate and command the respect of a wide cross section of society, and who were able to convince the people that the constitution was not just an instrument for aggrandizement of their personal power. Although India's constitution was formally created by a constituent assembly between December 1946 and November 1949, it roughly took 3 years, and it drew upon a long history of the nationalist movement that had a remarkable ability to take along different sections of the Indian society. The final document reflected the broad national consensus at the time. Some countries have subjected their constitution to a full-fledged referendum where all the people vote on the desirability of a constitution. The Indian constitution was never subjected to such a referendum, but nevertheless carried the enormous public authority because it had the consensus and the backing of the leaders who were themselves popular at that point of time. Although the Indian Constitution itself was not subjected to a referendum, the people adopted it as their own by abiding by its provisions. Therefore, the authority of people who enact the Constitution helps determine its prospects for success. The substantive provisions of a constitution. It is the hallmark of a successful constitution that it gives everyone in society some reason to go along with its provisions. A constitution that, for instance, allowed permanent majorities to oppress minority groups within the society would give minorities no reason to go along with the provisions of the Constitution. Constitution that systematically privileged some members at the expense of the others, or that systematically entrenched the power of the small group in a society, would cease to command allegiance. If any group feels that their identity is being stifled, destroyed, they will have no reason to abide by the Constitution. No constitution by itself achieves perfect justice, but it has to convince people that it provides the framework for pursuing the basic justice. So the substantive provisions of a constitution should always give a good reason for everyone in the country to go along with its provisions. It cannot give a special power to majorities, then obviously it is not giving any good reason for the minorities to go along with it, or giving some special privileges to some people at the expense of a small group. There also they would cease to command allegiance. And if any group feels that their identity is being stifled, they will have no reason to abide by the Constitution. So no constitution by itself achieves perfect justice. It has to convince people that it provides framework for pursuing basic justice. Ask yourself this question: what would be the content of some basic rules in the society, such that they gave everyone a reason to go along with them? The more a constitution preserves the freedom and the equality of all its members, the more likely it is to succeed. Any constitution which does not promise to preserve the freedom and the equality of all its members, then definitely it is not going to succeed. Does the Indian Constitution, broadly speaking, give everyone a reason to go along with its broad outlines? After you finish learning this module or this course, you should be able to answer the question in an affirmative manner once you understand all the provisions of the Constitution. Balanced institutional design. The constitutions are often subverted not only by the people but by a small group who wish to enhance their own power. Well-crafted constitutions fragment power in society intelligently so that no single group can subvert the Constitution. One way of such intelligent designing of a constitution is to ensure that no single institution acquires monopoly of power. This is often done by fragmenting the power across different institutions. The Indian Constitution, for example, horizontally fragments the power across different institutions like the legislature, executive, and the judiciary, and even independent statutory bodies like the Election Commission. This ensures that if one institution wants to subvert the Constitution, others can check its transgressions and an intelligent system of check and balances has facilitated the success of the Indian Constitution. So, constitutions are often subverted not only by the people but by small groups who wish to enhance their power. A well crafted constitution has a fragments in society intelligently so that no single group can subvert the constitution. One way of such intelligent designing of a constitution is to ensure no single institution acquires the monopoly of power. This can be done by fragmenting the power across the different institutions. For example, the Indian Constitution has divided its power, fragmented its power horizontally across the different institutions like the legislature, executive, and the judiciary, and even independent statutory bodies like the Election Commission. This ensures that even if one institution wants to subvert the constitution, others can check its transgressions. An intelligent system of checks and balances had facilitated the success of the Indian Constitution. Another important aspect of intelligent institutional design is that a constitution must strike the right balance between certain values, norms, and procedures as authoritative. At the same time, it has to allow enough flexibility in its operations to adapt to changing needs and circumstances. So, we need to understand here that any important constitution or an intelligent institutional design, when we speak about, it has to strike a right balance between the certain values, norms, and the procedures as authoritative. There should be a clear balance. As an authoritative person, it should balance values, norms, and procedures. At the same time, on the other hand, it has to allow enough flexibility in its operations to adapt to the changing needs and circumstances. Too rigid a constitution is likely to break under the weight of change. If the constitutions are too rigid, definitely it is going to fail because change is inevitable. A constitution that is, on the other hand, too flexible will give no security, predictability, or identity to the people. It cannot be too rigid. At the same time, it cannot be too flexible. Successful constitutions always strike the right balance between preserving the core values and also adapting them to the new circumstances. The Indian Constitution is described as a living document. Why? Because by striking a balance between the possibility to change the provisions and the limit on such changes, the Constitution has ensured that it will survive as a document and respected by people. So, in order to have a successful Constitution, we need to have a proper balance between the values and adapting them to the new circumstances. That's where rightly the Indian Constitution is described as a living document. This arrangement also ensures that no section or a group can on its own subvert the Constitution. Therefore, in determining whether a constitution has an authority, you can ask yourself few questions. Secondly, did the constitution ensure that power was intelligently organized so that it was not easy for any group to subvert the constitution? And most importantly, does the constitution give everyone some reason to go along with it? Most of this module or this chapter in the book is about this question. does it give you some reason to go along with it? Also, is the Constitution the locus of people's hopes and aspirations? The ability of the Constitution to command voluntary allegiance of the people depends to a certain extent upon whether the Constitution is just or not. So we need to know and ask ourselves, did the Constitution ensure the power was intelligently organized? At the same time, did the Constitution give you some reason to go along with it? Then only we can be able to understand whether it is a balanced institutional design or not. And let us learn how the Indian Constitution was made. Formally, the Constitution was made by the Constituent Assembly, which was being elected for undivided India. So undivided India means before India and Pakistan were partitioned, before that the Constituent Assembly was elected. What is the duty of a Constituent Assembly? The main duty of the Constituent Assembly is to draft a constitution for a country. So the Constitution was generally drafted by a Constituent Assembly, and in India we had its first meeting on 9th December 1946, and they have reassembled as a Constituent Assembly for a divided India on 14th of August 1947. Its members were chosen by indirect elections by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies that had been established under the Government of India Act 1935. So, the members of the Constituent Assembly were chosen by indirect elections. Who have chosen them? The members of the provincial legislative assemblies or the state assemblies that are established under the Government of India Act of 1935. So the Constituent Assembly was proposed roughly along the lines suggested by the Committee of the British Cabinet known as Cabinet Mission. So what are the guidelines that they have adopted to comprise the Constituent Assembly or the composition of the Constituent Assembly? The Constituent Assembly was composed roughly along the lines suggested by the plan given by the Committee of British, that is known as Cabinet Mission Plan. So according to this plan, each province and each princely state or a group of states were allotted seats proportional to their respective population, roughly in the ratio of 1:10 lakhs. So for every 10 lakh, there is one representative from every state, and also every princely states who have agreed for the British rule in British India. As a result, the provinces that were under the direct British rule were to elect 292 members, and while the princely states were allotted a minimum of 93 seats. So, how was the Indian Constitution made? The Indian Constitution was made by the Constituent Assembly. How is the Constituent Assembly elected? The Constituent Assembly was elected by indirect elections by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies that had been established under the Government of India Act 1935. So, how was the composition of the Constituent Assembly? The composition of the Constituent Assembly was done based on the guidelines given by the British Cabinet known as Cabinet Mission. So as per the Cabinet Mission plan, each province, each state will have their elected members, roughly for every 10 lakh one member, and the princely states or a group of small states were allotted proportional to their respective population, roughly that is 1:10 lakhs. So as a result, the provinces were to elect 292 members, while the princely states were allotted a minimum of 93 seats. In this way, the Constituent Assembly was composed. As a consequence of the partition under the plan of 3rd June 1947, it has been decided that India and Pakistan will be partitioned. So the members who were elected from the territories which fell under Pakistan ceased to be the members of the Constituent Assembly. They were no more the members of Indian Constituent Assembly. So now the number of members in the Assembly was reduced to 299. And the Constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949. 284 members were actually present on 24th of January 1950 and appended their signatures to the Constitution as finally passed. The Constitution came into force on 26 January 1950. So the Constitution was thus framed against the backdrop of horrendous violence that the partition unleashed on the subcontinent. But it is a tribute to the fortitude of the framers that they were not only able to draft a constitution under immense pressure, but also learnt the right lessons from unimaginable violence that accompanied the partition after India and Pakistan were partitioned as per the 3rd June 1947 plan. The Constitution was committed to a new conception of citizenship where not only would minorities be secure, but the religious identity would have no bearing on citizenship rights. The Constituent Assembly that drafted the Constitution touches upon only the surface of how our Constitution was made. Although the members of the Assembly were not elected by universal suffrage, there was a serious attempt to make the Assembly a representative body. Members of all the religions were given representation under the scheme described above. In addition, the Assembly had 28 members from the scheduled caste. In terms of political parties, Congress dominated the Assembly, occupying as many as 82% of the seats in the Assembly after the partition. The Congress itself was such a diverse party that it managed to accommodate almost all the shades of opinion within it, the principle of deliberation. The authority of the Constituent Assembly does not come only from the fact that it was broadly, though not perfectly, representative in nature. It comes from the procedures that it has adopted to frame the Constitution and also the values its members brought in through the deliberations. While any assembly that claims to be a representative in nature, it is desirable that the diverse sections of a society participate in the discussions. It is equally important that they participate not only as representatives of their own identity but also for the community. Each member deliberated upon the Constitution with the interest of the whole nation in the mind. There were often disagreements amongst the members, but few of these disagreements could be traced to members protecting their own interest. There were legitimate differences of principle, and the differences were many. Should India adopt a centralized or a decentralized system of government? What should be the relation between the states and the center? What should be the powers of the judiciary? Should the Constitution protect property rights? Almost every issue that lies at the foundation of a modern state was discussed with great sophistication. Only one provision of the Constitution was passed without virtually any debate. That is, the introduction of universal suffrage, meaning that all citizens reaching a certain age would be entitled to be voters irrespective of religion, caste, education, gender, or income. So, while the members felt no need at all to discuss the issue of who should have the right to vote, every other matter was seriously discussed and debated. Nothing can be a better testament to the democratic commitment of this Constituent Assembly procedures. The importance of public reason was emphasized in the mundane procedures of the Assembly as well. The Constituent Assembly had 8 major committees on different subjects to look into. Usually, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rajendra Prasad, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, or B.R. Ambedkar chaired these committees. They were not men who agreed with each other on many things. Ambedkar had been a better critic of the Congress and Gandhiji, accusing them of not doing enough for the upliftment of the scheduled caste. Patel and Nehru disagreed on many issues. Nevertheless, they all worked together. Each committee usually drafted a particular provision of the Constitution, which were then subjected to debate by the entire Assembly. Usually, an attempt was made to reach a consensus with the belief that provisions agreed to by all would not be detrimental to any particular interest. Some provisions were subjected to the voting as well. But in each instance, every single argument, query, or concern was responded to with great care and in writing as well. The Assembly met for 166 days, spread over 2 years, 11 months, 18 days. Its sessions were open to the press and the public alike. So these are the procedures which are followed while drafting the Indian Constitution. Inheritance of the nationalist movement. No constitution is simply a product of the assembly that produces it. An assembly as diverse as that of the Constituent Assembly of India could not have functioned if there was no background consensus on the main principles the Constitution should enshrine upon. These principles were forged during the long struggles for freedom. In a way, the Constituent Assembly was actually giving a concrete shape and form to the principles it had inherited from the nationalist movement. For decades preceding in the promulgation of the Constitution, the nationalist movement had debated many questions that were relevant to the making of the Constitution. The shape and the form of the government India should have, the values it should uphold, the inequalities it should overcome. Answers forged in those debates were given their final form in the Constitution. The best summary of the principles that the nationalist movement brought to the National Constituent Assembly is the objective resolution. The resolutions that defined the aims of the Assembly moved by Nehru in 1946. These resolutions encapsulated the aspirations and the values behind the Constitution. Terms as substantive provisions of the Constitution is inspired by and summed up by the values incorporated in the objectives resolution. Based on this resolution, our Constitution gave institutional expression to these fundamental commitments: equality, liberty, democracy, sovereignty, and a cosmopolitan identity. Thus, our Constitution is not merely a maze of rules and procedures, but a moral commitment to establish a government that will fulfill the many promises that the nationalist movement held before the people. Welcome to this module on what are the main points of the objective resolutions. India is an independent, sovereign, republican nation. India shall be an union of erstwhile British Indian territories, Indian states, and the other parts outside the British India and the Indian states as are willing to be a part of the union. Territories forming the union shall be autonomous units and exercise all powers and functions of the government and administration except those assigned to or vested in the union. All powers and authority of sovereign and independent India and its constitution shall flow from the people. All people of India shall be guaranteed and secured social, economic, and political justice, equality of status and opportunities, and equality before law, and fundamental freedoms of speech, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action subject to law and public morality. The minorities, backward and the tribal areas, depressed and the other backward classes shall be provided adequate safeguards. The territorial integrity of the Republic and its sovereign rights on the land, sea, and air shall be maintained according to justice and the law of the civilized nation. The land would fully make willing contributions to the promotion of the world peace and the welfare of the mankind. So these were the main points of the objective resolutions passed by Jawaharlal Nehru in 1946 on institutional arrangements. The third factor ensuring the effectiveness of the constitution is a balanced arrangement of the institutions of the government. The basic principle is the government must be democratic and committed to the welfare of the people. The Constituent Assembly spent a lot of time on evolving the right balance among the various institutions like the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. This led to the adoption of the parliamentary form and the federal arrangement, which would distribute the governmental powers between the legislature and the executive on one hand and between the states and the central government on the other hand. While evolving the most balanced governmental arrangement, the makers of our constitution did not hesitate to learn from the experiments and the experiences of other countries as well. Thus, the framers of the constitution were not averse to borrowing from other constitutional traditions as well. Indeed, it is a testament to their wide learning that they would lay their hands upon any intellectual arguments or historical examples that was necessary for fulfilling the task at hand. So, they borrowed a number of provisions from different countries. But borrowing these ideas was not slavish imitation, far from it. Each provision of the Constitution had to be defended on the grounds that it was suited to Indian problems and aspirations. India was extremely lucky to have an assembly that, instead of being parochial in its outlook, could take the best available everywhere in the world and make it their own. So that is how they borrowed the provisions from the other constitutions, but they tried to check how far it is suitable to the Indian problems and aspirations. What are the provisions adopted from other constitutions or the constitutions of different countries? First, the British Constitution. What are the provisions that are adopted from the British Constitution? First past the post system. The first past the post election system was borrowed from the British Constitution. Second, we borrowed the parliamentary form of government. Third, the idea of the rule of law, the institution of a speaker and his or her role in law making procedure. So from the British Constitution, we adopted first past the post system of elections, parliamentary form of government, the idea of the rule of law, institution of the speaker, his or her role in making the law making procedure. From the Irish Constitution, we have borrowed the directive principles of state policy. From the French Constitution, we have borrowed the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. From the United States Constitution, the Charter of Fundamental Rights, the power of judicial review, and the independence of the judiciary are borrowed. From the Canadian Constitution, the quasi-federal form of government, a federal system with a strong central government, and the idea of residual powers. And the last, the German Constitution, we borrowed the emergency provisions. So, in the Indian Constitution, they have borrowed from British Constitution, Irish Constitution, French Constitution, US Constitution, Canadian Constitution, and the German Constitution, and made one of the best constitutions in the world. That's all we have in this course. Thank you very much for taking this course. Thank you.